2021 wrap up, and I am looking forward to telling you about the books that I read. I will just jump into the books because I have a lot to get through. Firstly, I read another Agatha Raisin. This was A Spoonful of Poison, and this I think is the 18th Agatha Raisin. This is a cozy mystery series. In case you're new to my channel, I will just recap about Agatha Raisin, who worked for a PR firm, but was like, I have had enough of this, business executive life, and I am going to retire early to the Cotswolds of England and have a quiet life, sleepy life in the country. And then she realizes how bored she is. So eventually, far enough into the series, Agatha opens up her own detective agency. As always, there is going to be some romantic drama in this book, and Agatha, she's not the most likable of people, but she's highly entertaining for being, the amateur sleuth detective person. Amateur sleuth detective. Anyhow, she jumps off the page, and the audiobooks are my first choice for this series, though. So another Agatha Raisin I enjoyed, and I think the next one is a Christmas one, and I'm feeling like breaking my normal rules and just going ahead with Christmas things, doing a bit of a Christmas in July kind of experience. Then a really lovely nostalgic experience, nostalgic but new at the same time, was reading through the first volume of the For Better or For Worse comic strip series by Lynn Johnston. And this includes, I think it's maybe up to 4 or 5 of the first books just bound up into one. And this was a series that aired, I think it ran for about 30 years. It was a long time. And it's very much based on the author Lynn Johnston's life, being a stay-at-home mom, and kind of the way she feels conflicted about that, where she adores her children, but she also gets kind of bored being at home. And you see this real conflict that she has. But what makes it is that it just does feel so real. It's based on those experiences that she has. And because of that, there's just a real special charm and quality about it. And I think I just love this. So what was interesting to me too, reading this, is that when I was reading the comic book series, it was not, I was not reading until it had aired for about a decade. And so I'm getting to see the family a lot younger. I was reading it when April, the youngest child, was born, and seeing when they have teenagers. Where the comic strips starts is when their Michael, I think his name is Michael, is around 4 or 5 maybe, and then Elizabeth is a baby. So I am definitely going to carry on. I really like this series, and that the kids age in real time, as opposed to, Dennis the Menace. He's perpetually a child and the same age. So I'm really looking forward to continuing on. Then, oh my goodness, I've had a whole month to digest this book, Son of the Shadows by Juliet Marillier. This is the second in her, what is it called? 7 Waters series. I was so nervous after reading and adoring Daughter of the Forest so much that I wasn't going to like it, and it wasn't going to live up to my memory of Daughter of the Forest. I liked this one just as much. I did not like it more. They were just, plot-wise, they were fairly different, but I loved this book. So you're following in, where is it? Yeah. In Daughter of the Forest, you're following Sorsha, and eventually, at the end, things resolve for Sorsha. In Son of the Shadows, you're following Sorsha and her husband's children, and what happens to them. There's a lot of twists and turns in this, and I didn't know how things were going to end, but she ended them beautifully. I love her writing, and what I really appreciated was that this one, it took me less time to get into this, so maybe I'm kind of getting used to Juliet Marillier's writing, or it was Son of the Shadows. I'll know when I read the third one, which I'm going to save for August, which is my birthday month, and I just want to really be extremely indulgent with my reading in August. So yes, I'm saving that one for August, and I love it, love it, love it. Yeah, I'm so excited about this series. Then I read Nathan Coulter by Wendell Berry. I had decided I wanted to be reading more Wendell Berry. This was, it's definitely a come down after reading Hannah Coulter, which was, a favorite book of, I think it was 2019. And his writing is just so beautiful, but it's also very low key. And there's just so much introspection that happens within the characters. And they're in this rural town in Kentucky. And Nathan Coulter, it doesn't give you nearly as much as Hannah Coulter did. Hannah Coulter has sort of this like overarching plot that happens, but Nathan Coulter is just this little window into Nathan's life for this brief period of time, and it's very masculine in how you are not really getting in his head a lot. He's not sharing a lot with you, but it did still, by the end, move me to tears. So his writing is absolutely beautiful, and I want to read more of his writing, but this was I definitely prefer Hannah Coulter. Then The J Curve by Paul Miller. This book really meant a lot to me. This is Christian writing on the intersection, the relationship between justification and sanctification. Justification being that you are, the work of Christ means that your sins are covered. And sanctification means a person who is a believer gradually becoming more like Christ through the work of the Holy Spirit. But I hadn't thought of it this way before. But in this book, he really unpacks that. And essentially, the relationship between sanctification and justification is union with Christ, which is a term I had heard used before. But what I really appreciated about this book is it gives you such everyday nitty-gritty examples about what it means to have this interact with your everyday regular life. And he shares some very personal examples in here. I cried multiple times while reading this because there were some very moving parts. And he also gives, you hear a lot about his experiences having a special needs daughter who is nonverbal. She uses a computer to talk. And just seeing how something that, the things that you read about in the Bible can seem so cerebral and just vague and like they aren't something that affects you in the here and now, but he shows in this book just how much they do. So it's one I definitely want to reread. And I listened to the audiobook of this and it was great, but I want to own my own copy and underline and annotate and scribble all over it and really grapple with the text again. But I highly recommend this for anyone who is interested in Christianity. It was just a very, very special book. And then I read The Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mackenzie. I loved this. And I'm extremely hard to please with books about books. I have DNF'd almost every single book about books that I have tried. And then this month, I ended up successfully reading 2. So I ended up with 2 that really suited my personality. And it is basically just Sarah Mackenzie's personal experience of reading aloud with her family. There is a lot of like rah-rah reading aloud, which can get a little repetitive, but she gives such personal examples that it makes the book really just a joy and a delight to go through, just to see how reading aloud has been such an integral part of their family having fun together. And it can make a really dull day exciting and just add such a richness and a depth to family culture. So I wrote down a lot of book titles that she recommended, and we'll gradually be checking those out from the library, primarily the picture books for now. And then I read The Telling Touch by Keira Dominguez, and unfortunately, this was just not a hit with me. This got 3 stars, so I definitely enjoyed it, but I was just expecting kind of a book I would get on with as much as her caprice. And I can't even tell you what it was. I don't know if maybe the writing felt more disjointed. I'm not certain what it is. And there were, I did like the characters, but it was, it just didn't come together for that X factor for me, that magical kind of mixture that her Caprice had. So it was a disappointment, and I'm very much still optimistic about The Sweet Rowan, which is out and I own, and I want to read that. So onwards and upwards, but I'm still so excited to continue exploring the entire sweet romance genre. And then I read To Kill a Mockingbird. This was a reread. I listened to the audiobook read by Sissy Spacek. This book is an all-time absolute favorite for me. It covers so much in one book. So much, so many issues. It is so emotionally weighty. I had to really take my time with this, even though I was so gripped by everything. It's a lot to process and so much to grieve over that happens in this. And just these conversations that seem so everyday, but they are so layered with so much that is happening. And I love To Kill a Mockingbird. I love it a lot, and I highly recommend Sissy Spacek's narration of it. This is a really neat setup for a book because it had a chapter for each of the senses, and in each chapter he gives you a specific example of a way that he experienced it, and basically the ways that our five senses can help us to delight and sense God and see his beauty out in the world. And I did very much enjoy this, but it did get overshadowed then by, I'll hold up my copy, which I did put a review up for this yesterday. You will have seen This Beautiful Truth by his sister, Sarah Clarkson. And this was, I liked sensing God, but just Sarah's writing and how personal this felt, I connected so very much with this. And yes, I'm declaring this my favorite book of the year. Shocker, but I really think it's going to be. So you can see my review video of this if you so desire. And then I read Castaway in Cornwall by Julie Klassen. This is a sweet historical romance. This was a 3-star read. So I've decided though that, when I give a cozy mystery 3 stars, it doesn't mean that I'm saying I disliked it. It just means that it was kind of this I coasted while I read it, and that is what I want out of the cozy mystery genre. I like to coast while I read it, and I consider that very enjoyable. Castaway in Cornwall was the same experience. Kind of coasted through it. It didn't rock my world like her Caprice, but I liked it and had a fun time reading it. So I don't know, as I continue to explore the sweet romance genre, if I will continue to be okay with 3-star sweet romance reads. I'm not sure. But that was what that one is. So it's just, I find I read different genres very differently. And so I'm still finding my footing with what I totally want out of sweet romance. And then I read The Romance of a Shop by Amy Levy. This was with my Read Along Most Victorian Patreon book club that I host. And this started out with so much potential. I was very hopeful for it. And I love the setup where there are these 4 sisters, 3 sisters and 1 half-sister. And they are orphaned and need to find out a way for them to live because they don't have a lot to live on. And they open up a photography studio. Does that not sound so fun? Does that not have a lot of potential? But what happened is the first half of the book I loved because you're spending so much time with the sisters, getting to know them. They had really interesting personalities. People in my book club, different people thought they did or thought they didn't, depending on who you asked. And I was really grooving with it, just going through. I'm loving this book. It's going to be a new favorite Victorian book. And then the second half hit, and the boys came and ruined everything. In the second half of the book, it's kind of like they feel like 2 very different halves. But also this book is very short. It's just over 200 pages. And so I think it could have done with 100 more pages. And it could have done really amazing things. But I feel you get to know the sisters so well and you're loving them. Then along comes the boys, and you don't really get to be up close and personal with the sisters anymore. It turns into a bit of a sensation novel. So yes, it ended up being, it was a solid 3-star read, which I would, normally be like, oh, a new Victorian book that I would maybe want to reread. But I started out thinking it was going to be a favorite. That it is what it is. Then Dumb Witness by Agatha Christie. I was just desperate, absolutely desperate to read a Poirot audiobook. And I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I did not remember the ending to it. And it's one of my ideal ways to spend an afternoon is to listen to an Agatha Christie audiobook and knit. So I'm definitely going to be doing that again in the month of June. And then I read A New Song by Jan Karon. This was the 5th in the Mitford series that I am doing a year-long read-along of the Mitford series, along with Chelsea from Voyage of a Time Wanderer, and Angie from Literary Labors, and Rainy from Rainy Day Reads. And this one kind of missed the mark with me. I think I gave it 3 stars. There were just some plot points that I won't go into it here because we're so deep into the series. So I'm hoping for better things with the next ones, but I'm still really enjoying doing this project, and am excited to pick my new book up each month. And then we get to Book Girl by Sarah Clarkson. This was the other book about books that I was successful in reading. This is a very special book, and I just love Sarah Clarkson's writing. And she's so good at conveying how meaningful and special your reading life can be, and how much more it can impact you than you might think, without really, if you don't think about it too much. A delightful, delightful book. She shares a lot of herself in it, and so many book titles that I wrote down and wanted to keep track of. So I'm hoping to slowly but surely make my way through many of the books that she references in that book. My one caveat with it is that I think she thinks kind of more fluff reading and romance reading in general, she just kind of paints with broad strokes over romance reading, is just not worth your time. And I think there's really a time and a place for that. And especially, me reading it as a person with chronic illness, like I'm just finding genre fiction to be the most consoling thing. And I'm very okay with it being consoling reading. And that's, a big part of why I read. So yes, I did really like it though. And then I read, as a buddy read with a lovely subscriber, Lisa, God Does His Best Work with Empty by Nancy Guthrie. This was okay. Everything she said was wonderful, but it was just to go from reading This Beautiful Truth with such lyrical and poignant writing to then the very straightforward, no nonsense writing and God Does His Best Work with Empty was a bit of a come down afterwards. So I did give it 3 stars, but everything that was in it was very good. And she does basically one chapter for different stories from the Bible. The Woman at the Well, Mephibosheth. How often do you hear about Mephibosheth? Not very often. What was another one? Ruth, and just a different chapter for a different story. And I like seeing that and how we can kind of take some lessons from that in our day-to-day lives. And then lastly, I did a reread of Wives and Daughters. Here it is. And this was a read-along I hosted with Kieran from Katie Reads. We ended up live streaming our discussion, and it was the most bonkers discussion ever, and it was really fun. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. Kieran is highly entertaining. So yes, that's all I'll say about this. More content to come on my channel. And I will leave it there. Thank you as always for watching. Let me know if you are interested in any of these or if you have read any of these, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye.